Yeah, he's got to go from being a guy that with a lot of potential and some production to being a guy with just a lot of production.
Nick, tell the people the name of this show.
TexAgs Rewind. We're presented by Specs. David's in the Rollo Insurance Studio.
That is correct.
Try again.
No, I think...
You thought you were going to get me.
No, I knew you would do it because you always got my blind spot. So on the show today, Olin Buchanan, he was really good. But Nick, what was your favorite part?
Well, that's Caitlin. I messed up. Caitlin, well, I'll flip the script.
Let her go
on
first,
you.
then you go.
I'll go.
Ladies
I'm ready.
first.
I really liked Colby Newton. I thought that was super, super interesting to hear the history of it. I thought he had a lot of good insight, a little different than what we normally do.
Yeah, he wrote a book on the origins of the SEC and what's made it like this just mega power. So that was a cool conversation. Nick, now your turn.
I'm going to go Ralph Russo.
That's a good name to say, right?
Yeah,
Ralph Russo.
Ralph D. Russo.
Yeah.
But a lot of Michigan talk recently, but it's interesting. It's Astros fan.
I think you said that as like a slight, like, we're doing a lot of Michigan on TexAgs.
No. I know other people are upset about that. I'm not. I enjoy it, but
other people are upset about it?
yeah,
Was there a text?
There's we'll talk about it later.
There's a message board?
Yeah.
Oh. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry I'm following current news. We had Alan Weddell on the show, right?
We did.
Anything else you want to provide, Nick?
No, I'm good.
Caitlin, anything else you want to provide?
That's all I got.
All right. Check out the Rewind. I'm glad we sold it so well. It's the TexAgs Rewind presented by Specs. And number 14, OB, is...
Armaj Reed Adams, all three of them.
So here's the truth. I've only seen limited plays of his on YouTube, right?
Me too. I did not watch a lot of Kansas football.
But hey, they have a chance to go to the playoffs apparently yesterday.
And they were pretty good last year, were they not?
Uh-huh.
And I did see one play in particular where they lined him up, I think, tight end, or maybe they had an unbalanced line, right?
Yep.
And he goes in motion because, he's that nimble. And at the snap, he's coming in motion. And he just unloads on, I can't remember if it was an outside linebacker, just, knocks him out of the frame, and they run over there. And so he's a guy that can bring a big impact.
He's a name that you hear other players bring up often, right? Like, to me, that's sometimes like my gauge of where players stand is when players talk about him and how they talk about him. Sometimes they forget people, right? But everybody has brought him up about Armaj. Like they bring him up often.
Yeah, it looks like, I'm getting the feeling, I should say. I'm going to say looks like. I haven't seen them line up in any certain, depth chart yet. But I'm getting the feeling that this guy's going to be the starter at right guard.
Yeah.
You feel that way?
I feel that way.
Yeah. Again, he played...
Didn't Chase basically allude to yesterday he plays a lot more on the left?
Yeah. Yeah, he did. So I'm thinking, that we're getting a feel of what I think that offensive line is going to be. I think it's going to be Armaj Reed Adams at right guard next to Reuben Fothery. This is what I'm guessing. We don't know that officially. This is Olin Buchanan speculating.
The speculator. I'm going to read you some stats from 2023. He played 12 games. 2 sacks allowed on 263 rushing attempts. A discrepancy with the above because of screens not counting as true pass rushing snaps, according to this note. 10 pressures allowed. 3.8 pressure rate, pretty solid. 9 penalties, 3 of them in the bowl game against UNLV when there were 27 total flags called and he was playing right tackle in that game instead of his better position of offensive guard. Coach Weddell, let's talk Connor Wickman because... the few times we've seen him start, the 8 times, he's been phenomenal, right? Like, so when you see him, if he can play 10, 12 games this year, what does the team look like? What does the offense look like?
We're going to win 10 or 12 ball games. He can do it all. First of all, he's a great leader. Second of all, he's a great kid. And third of all, he makes the locker room good. And that right there with the quarterback is the 3 boxes you got to have to start with. And then talent-wise, he's got all the tools. I mean, if he was baseball, he'd be what they call him, a 5-star, a 5-person deal. He's 5-star for a reason in football. He's just got to stay healthy, learn the system, play within himself, But he's not Johnny Manziel, but he's dadgum good, and he's got good players around him to get the ball to, and all that kind of stuff. The offensive line can come around. and I think they're taking it personal this year, then I think that we're going to be really, really good and offensively and protect our quarterback and as he learns the scheme. As fast as Wigman can progress, will be as fast as the offense can progress, and that's the key in winning the Southeast Conference. Defense will keep us in the game. Offense has to find a way to win it in the fourth quarter.
Is the Big Ten catching up, and how much staying power does the SEC have in this new world of college football?
Yeah, those are great questions. And everybody wants to focus on the money, especially when you talk about what they're distributing to each member of the league. And the Big Ten, are they catching up? I don't think so. And, we talked about it a minute ago. The money's great, but does it translate to not only, in my mind, victories on the field and contention for national championships, but depth? Are there going to be multiple teams and schools that can compete? What does it look like in the future? That's going to be such a fascinating thing to watch over the next 10 years because there's such a different philosophy. The SEC, going back to when they grabbed South Carolina and Arkansas, and then Texas A&M and Mizzou, and now what they've done with Texas and Oklahoma, have really stayed, I feel like, true to their roots. The Big Ten is not. The Big Ten now, we're going to have UCLA playing Rutgers, and it's a conference game. Is that going to be something that continues to propel the Big Ten towards national championships? I don't think that it will, but it's going to be really fascinating to watch over the next 10 years what happens with these two leagues.
So follow up to that, what do you think about this new SEC with the additions, with the size, and the potential additions here in the next 2 to 5 years?
I think it's great. And especially as I look back and did research for the book to see, what Texas, Oklahoma, even Texas A&M almost joined the league in the late 80s. And you've got some quotes in the book from the commissioner at the time, Harvey Schiller, who came in right before Roy Kramer and really started greasing the wheels for expansion. And they wanted those teams then because they matched. They match with facilities, they match with passion, and they match with wins. So, having been to the Texas State Fair and having been to a Texas-Oklahoma game, that environment, that fits the SEC. And it fits what I have seen with my own eyes at these games that I've been to. So I think that as long as the SEC stays true to that, we hear so much about conference expansion with Florida State and Clemson and all that, and who knows what's going to happen. But I think as long as the league stays true to what they've done in the past, they're going to be just fine.
Ralph, I want to follow that up because I don't expect A&M to make the playoffs this year. I think they're a team that wouldn't surprise me if they got there because of the talent that they've had the last few years. But I just want to be in the conversation in late October, early November, like, hey, there's a path here. That's kind of where I am right, at least for year one of the Coach Elko experience.
Sure. Listen, I think if you can get to the Texas game with, I would say a chance to make the playoff. Honestly, that seems like a little bit of a stretch in year one. I think, Weigman would have to be just phenomenal, like the best of himself. You'd have to have, again, some playmakers really emerge. That offensive line would have to really come together. You're talking best case scenario there. But if you can get to that Texas game with a chance to win 9 games, I can't imagine that's not a successful first year with all that A&M has gone through. I can't imagine you can't qualify. The A&M game, we have a chance to win 9 games. That's got to be considered. The Texas game with a chance to win 9 seems like a success to me.
Well, Ralph, let's go back to that Connor Wigman comment before I let you go. If Connor shows us what he's shown in 8 starts, 19 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, there's this narrative that he's injury prone. He's had 1 injury in college football. If he is that guy that we've seen in the Miami game, even though they lost last year, and all these games where he's thrown for 300 and no interceptions, a couple touchdown passes, if that's the case, then those kind of storylines are totally possible, right?
I think very much so. Again, you know that roster better than me. I see a secondary that probably needs to come together a little bit, and an offensive line. But I think that's sort of the beauty of where the SEC is this year, right? You have Wegman, Jackson Arnold, I would say Nico at Tennessee, Nussmeier at LSU. None of these guys have very long resumes, but they're all former 4 and 5 stars, right? So like the ceiling is all very high for them. And the one that clicks, all of a sudden that team that maybe we don't think of as a playoff contender very much could be a playoff contender. And that's why, I have a hard time making those tiers, because one of those guys could very well push his team up into the next tier.
All right, Ms. Torn, tell the people what they should do and must do.
Y'all should and must like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter. We've got just about every social media platform, I think. Follow us on all those and tell your friends.
Tell your friends. We'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.